Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. In the first story, our OP took it upon himself to teach a rude customer a lesson, so the customer had no choice but to accept defeat and make himself look like an idiot. So don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here, and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. Just get me a spark plug. They're all the same. Many years ago, I worked in an AutoZone. If you've never worked in one, here's what you need to know about it. Customers are rude. I'd say, "Hi, how are you today?" And they'd reply, "1995 Chevy truck, alternator." Customers think that they know everything about cars. They don't. And sometimes customers are jerks. They'd buy the wrong part, kick it around the dirt in their driveway for an hour, and then return it and demand their money back. We'd refund them because the profit margins on these Chinese parts were so high that it wasn't worth losing the customer over. And this particular store had a problem with the AC, so it was constantly a sweatbox. After 6 months of this, I was not a nice guy anymore. One day a man came in looking for a spark plug for an old dirt bike. Motorcycle plugs are hard to match since our database is limited, and so is our stock of plugs, but I made my best effort. "Do you have the old plug with you? I can cross-reference the number on the old plug and find a match." "No, I just need a plug." "Yes, sir, I want to be sure I get the right one for you. Do you know the make and model of the bike?" He gave me the make and model, but our system didn't have any information on that bike, so I've got no way of finding the right plug. Meanwhile, the customer's becoming more insistent that he just needs a plug, they're all the same. I pull out my phone and try to look up the part number online, no luck. I asked the guy if there's anyone at home that can pull the plug out and give us the part number. Customers had enough of me trying to help him and barks, "Just give me the damn spark plug. I don't have time for this." I'd had enough of sweating in this store and being treated like an idiot by jerks. I wanted this guy to learn a lesson. I turned to the rack of plugs and grabbed the first one on the top left. Since they were sorted by number, this was a plug that would fit a 1960 Chevy V8. It was twice the size of anything that might fit on a dirt bike. I handed it to the customer and said, "This won't work. Cash register's over there," and then went to help the next customer. I should mention that this store was in the country. It wasn't unusual for a customer to drive an hour to get to us. Several hours later, the guy returned, tail between his legs, with the old spark plug. "You were right. It didn't fit." I took the old plug, cross-referenced the part number, and sent him on his way with the right part. Hopefully the extra round trip taught him to be a little more respectful next time. To give the customer credit, it's nice seeing the guy admit he's wrong. Too many people go to ridiculous lengths denying their mistake. And our second story. Man cuts into airport queue and gets shamed. A few years back, I was traveling throughout Mexico to visit family. On the final leg of the trip, I took a long, bumpy flight to Mexico City, where I'd transfer to another plane and begin my journey home to Canada. Exhausted, feeling grimy and stressed, I lined up to check in with my airline at the crack of dawn. It was a good thing that my flight was hours away because the line was over 100 people long, winding through the terminal and past the shop selling Mexican crafts and crappy tequila in colorful handcrafted bottles. After what felt like a day but was probably just 90 minutes, I'd made it close enough to actually see the check-in counter and a glimmer of hope on the horizon, and my stress began to fade away. That is, until I saw a man of about 40 or 50, old enough to know better, anyway, walk to the front of the empty queue beside us to see if he was in the right spot. After pretending to look around and ascertain where he should be, he decided that he deserved to be closer to the front and just cut into the line of about 20 people ahead of me. My blood began to boil, but I was too far away to say or do anything, so I just patiently, silently waited like I'd been doing for the past 90 minutes. Looking around, I noticed that some others had noticed what he'd done, but were also opting to remain silent. As I approached the final row of the queue, I noticed the man had a maple leaf patch sewn into his bag, and this made me angrier for some reason. Now, I'm not one to be patriotic, because it's stupid to be proud of just being born somewhere, but I know that for better or worse, people are judged wherever they go. It's why people put the maple leaf on their bags anyway, because of the good reputation Canadians have, and here was this a-hole flying the flag while being a selfish twat. Finally, it's the chosen one's turn to check in, and luckily the desk was about 10 feet away from where I was in the queue. I watched and waited for him to place his luggage on the scale because I knew he'd have to turn towards me for this, and finally he did. I raised my voice loud enough to be heard by him and anyone in a 15-foot radius and say to him, "Excuse me, sir?" He looks at me. "If you're going to continue cutting in lines, can you please take the flag off your bag? You're an embarrassment to the country." He looks flustered and embarrassed, but remains silent. He turns back to the desk and eventually shuffles off. I was proud for calling him on what he did, even if it was after he'd already reaped the rewards of being a selfish line cutter. Later on, when I was sitting at my gate, I noticed that he was approaching, and he noticed that I noticed, so he decided to sit far enough away to hide his shame from my eyesight. He was going to Vancouver, and I to Toronto, so we never had the opportunity to see each other again. And our next story. I'm going to insult your intelligence, then demand your assistance. Luxury retail at its finest. Quick story about an encounter this past week. It's petty, but it stuck with me. Backstory. I work for a high-end luxury department store in a major U.S. West Coast city. 90% of my clients are absolutely loaded with money. I sell all over the store, but primarily I'm the specialist for a well-recognized, long-established fashion house, Label. Many Label pieces are classic, so a lot of my Label clientele are age 55 plus. I have two categories for this demographic, LOLs and ROFLs. LOL, lovely old ladies. ROFL, rude, obnoxious, F-head ladies. This is a quick story about a ROFL, Helga. Helga comes in, I greet her pleasantly, which she chooses to ignore while she looks me up and down. She focuses on my heels. Helga, incredulously, "Do you wear those heels all day long?" Now, I get asked this question frequently. People are typically astonished and impressed that I can wear heels for 9 hours straight. Me, blushing. Mostly, I think my feet are accustomed to it by now. Helga sniffs. Well, you know what they say. The higher the heel, the lower the IQ. I must have stared at her for 2 seconds with a blank smile on my face while I tried to process what she just said. Helga, now, I need you to find me some black pants. Now. I'm in a hurry, so don't dither about, and snaps her fingers at me. My shoes are in no way stripper heels. They're a demure 2.5-inch heel pump by another iconic brand. Whatever. So I race around, find every pair of black pants by every designer I can find for her while she sits on a chase waiting. I finish, offer to open a lounge for her, fitting room, but she declines. Helga, no, I don't have the time. She tosses her card at me to ring all of them up, 9 or so pairs, about $4,000 worth. She doesn't even get off the chase to sign the receipt and loudly sighs when I bring over our copy of the receipt to sign. I hand her purchase and thank her, but she walks away mid-sentence. I just shake my head and get back to work. Fast forward 2 days later. I'm busy doing something, and suddenly Helga marches up to me and dumps her bag of pants in my arms. Helga, rolling her eyes, none of these worked. So I patiently pull out each inside-out, crumpled pair and return them all. Pretty sure she wore one of them. There were heel marks on the cuff. She walks away after we're done without another word. The kicker? See what I did there? Today she's wearing the exact same pair of pumps I was wearing the day I originally helped her. B. The higher the heel, the lower the IQ. So what's your excuse? And our last story. Dealing with an entitled neighbor. Let's go back to my days as a paramedic. We got a call to a house where there was a bariatric patient who had fallen. The patient was morbidly obese and weighed around 30 stone, 420 pounds. This story isn't really about them, though. There are many reasons people get to this size, and I've never judged, only helped. No, the problem here was a really arrogant neighbor we'd come across before. And boy, was this chap a judgmental moron. Our patient had a car and had a disabled parking permit. They also had a council-designated disabled parking spot outside their home, which the neighbor kept parking in. There had been a number of letters from the council regarding this, and a number of parking fines just served to annoy this chap even more. On the day of the story, I took the call that the patient had fallen, and we went to the house. Sure enough, the neighbor was not only parked in the disabled spot, but had parked a second car blocking access to the patient's driveway. I assessed the patient and suspected they had a broken hip, so needed to go in. I sent my colleague round to the neighbor to ask them to move the cars, and when they came back, I was told the neighbor had just told my colleague to do one. No problem. Time to get the message home. I radioed through to our control center and asked for the fire service and police. We needed the fire service to help lift the guy and the police to do a little parking control. The fire service were the first to arrive, and I spoke to the crew commander to let them know what the situation was. The fireman went to the house to ask the neighbor to move his car and was told the same as my colleague. The message was relayed back, and the watch commander just asked me one question. Is the patient's life at risk? I knew exactly where this was going, and it was time our thoughtless neighbor got the message. My answer was yes. There is equipment I need to get into the house, and the driveway is blocked, preventing me doing so. The watch commander told the fire truck driver to move those vehicles. It was really satisfying to see both vehicles being pushed down the road by the fire service, and the look on the neighbor's face as he came out spitting and screaming was well worth seeing. His complaints to the police fell on deaf ears. They were well aware of his history of obstruction, and my clinical assessment that the patient's life was in danger was more than enough justification for the vehicles to be moved. It really brought a smile to our patient's face as we wheeled her out. My favorite addendum to this is that the fire service will have billed the neighbor for any damage to the truck. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.